I'm Annette Lucas, and this is Upfront. Today we're talking about a topic that is of concern to people who live in the Ladysmith area. It is for the First Nations people, the Stz'uminus, as well as people who live here. And it's about the updated waterfront plan. What is going to happen with a large parcel below the highway stretching down to the waterfront? With me today is Mayor Aaron Stone and Chief John Elliott. Thank you for joining us today here and talking about this important subject. So I guess I want to have a first explanation. What exactly is the partnership that has been formed between the two of you to address this issue?
Well, I would say nearly 2 decades ago, the mayor of the time approached Stz'uminus First Nation about working together to come together as the communities and forge a stronger partnership, leading up to 10 years ago now, where the first community accord was signed between the people of Stz'uminus and Ladysmith, and working over this last decade to the point of 2012, where the Not-So-Much Community Accords were signed, and the Memorandum of Understanding, which highlighted items of mutual concern and projects that we could do together, and the waterfront was highlighted as one of the major projects in that accord. And over the last several years since then, we've done a lot of the preliminary work, geotechnical, environmental studies, things like that, as well as growing the relationship between our two communities that now resulted in this process taking place at the start of last year. And working through this year, we intend to develop a new waterfront area plan that addresses the concerns around remediation, land use, as well as our health of our harbor and waterfront.
Now, Chief John Elliott, I'd like to ask you about being the traditional territory of the Stz'uminus. Let's just get a bit of a background. How many centuries are we talking about that your people have lived in this area?
Yeah, I think for Stz'uminus, it's we've been. History shows that we've been here for over 5,000 years, and so we have a lot of, as being here that long, we have a lot of interest in this area. So that's how we come together, and how important it is to understand the history of our people in this area.
The partnership, how important is it that you're working together on this and going forward to the future?
I think it's really important. I think Stz'uminus First Nation is moving forward in many aspects around economic development and other areas within the harbor. We along with the town of Ladysmith, understand that the harbor needs to be a healthy place for generations to come. So the partnership is, I think, instrumental on moving some of these things forward that benefit everyone, both communities, that we can create opportunities of employment or economic opportunities that can drive the community forward.
Now, Mayor Stone, you had mentioned, Ladysmith, a heritage town, but that area was heavy industrial use for probably 100 years or so, mostly with coal. Maybe you want to address what that has done to that waterfront area.
So, many people are familiar with Slack Point as a major feature of the waterfront, and in fact, that is coal fill. So originally, that would have been a deep water moorage port that was filled in with coal through the coal mining operations. There's also been subsequent smelter work, wood log sorts in there that over time have contributed to contamination all along the harbor, beyond just the large feature that is Slack Point itself. So over the last several years, studies have been done on the levels of contamination, the seismic stability of those features, if you will, some of the challenges that we have to deal with. And we understood over the last several years that it's a significant price tag, but we feel that with work with other levels of government, the partnership with Stz'uminus and Ladysmith, that we can address the environmental issues along with developing an economic plan that makes it affordable and actually provides prosperity opportunities for future generations. So we're not just looking at doing costs of remediation, we're looking at supporting it with an economic development plan that will provide for that opportunity to be realistic. So there will be a combination of uses down there, features and amenities that help support land values and the waterfront values that will allow us to invest in remediation work, hopefully in partnership with senior levels of government.
And I know there's been a lot of the environmental studies over the years, and that was a big question about looking at what can be done with the waterfront, was not knowing what was underneath there. Now, you hadn't talked about the cost, but I had read that you said it might be $30 million to remediate that area?
Yeah, it could be in excess of $30 million. There's various different options that were laid out as part of the studies that were done over the last several years. They ranged from several $1 million to up over $30 million. And some of them are, even in that context, maybe not necessarily realistic, in that then you have to find somewhere else to deposit that contaminated material. So we still continue to work through the realistic economics of it, as well as what's best for the health of the harbor long term. Of course, we don't want any further contamination or erosion of the contamination into the harbor, so we need to, at the very least, stabilize and remediate to a point of containment, and remove what materials we can, while balancing those costs in terms of the environmental work and what will provide the best outcomes when you balance all of those things for both communities.
One of the questions that came up in a casual conversation was, how much money are we talking about that is available for the development, not just the remediation? Is there a fund, a dollar figure that's been put in there that would tell you where you can go and what can be developed down there and how far you can go, or is this a long-range plan?
The developers would fund the work that they develop, so would not be Stz'uminus or Ladysmith, unless they were partnering with the communities to do that work. Developers would bring their own resources to bear. But we understand that there's significant land value, for example, in the town-owned lands, that could be realized by having a sort of a cohesive plan in terms of remediation and what other amenities will be down there to build up the surrounding land value. So there's, I think, an understanding that in addition to partnering with senior levels of government, the federal and provincial government do have some responsibility there for the allowance of that contamination and no remediation taking place when those industries left. We've had just preliminary meetings with the province at this time, and are looking to make more conversations with the federal government as we move forward. But there is, we believe, significant opportunity for partnerships, not just through Stz'uminus and Ladysmith, but through the federal and provincial government, to make that remediation realistic. Now, does that mean full removal and remediation? I don't know if that's necessarily realistic, but as we move through the planning process to the point where we are now, through the conclusion of the process, we'll be able to put a finer tip on what those costs are based on the plan that gets adopted by the communities. Then we can go back to other levels of government and say, this is what we've done, and we can support it with an economic development plan that will say, these are the returns on that investment. So it's not just about the responsibility of senior levels of government to do the cleanup, but to say, once you've done that cleanup, we've supported it with an economic opportunity that will provide this payback through taxation, through economic development, to the senior levels of government, as well as to both communities of Ladysmith and Stz'uminus over time. So I think having all of those pieces together and the cooperation between Stz'uminus and Ladysmith really puts us in an advantageous position to realize the outcomes.
You talk about developing opportunities, and I guess I want to give Chief Elliott a voice here. Has there been a type of vision that the Stz'uminus has had for that area a long time before the partnerships were, or are you both on the same page now, and what would you like to see?
I think for us, it's Stz'uminus First Nation, it's just an interest. We do already have shellfish harvesting within the harbor, and I think with the industrial impacts in the last 100 years, it has really has impacted some of the things we need to do. So we, as the partnership, like the mayor said, we have to work together. We have to make sure that we are doing it together, because you know, it's going to affect all the next generations. But if we can continue to partner up and work together, we are, as a nation, have been already involved in looking at opportunities within Ladysmith Harbor for economic opportunities. And if that, if that's a partnership or in any other area, we're definitely involved. I mean, we have to be involved, and I think that's why we sit here today. Is that it's one of those things where we come together because it is important for, you know, not only the partnership, but building and showing the outside governments that, you know, we are working together, we are trying to make a difference, but we do need that support down the road to make this happen, because there is a large cleanup that needs to be done, and we have to do it together, else we probably never get there.
And that cleanup could take years too. I mean, people, I think, when they hear about the waterfront plan, they update a vision for the future, and they're thinking next year, it's going to happen all next year. Is that reality when we're looking at something might take place down there?
Yeah, I don't think it would be realistic to think it would be all done in a year. There's definitely a significant amount of work. This is a generational piece that needs to be looked at it that way. We've talked about struggling with the waterfront for over 2 decades. Stz'uminus and Ladysmith weren't together at the table through those stages, and a lot of times that was proposals coming into the community, and that was part of this initiative to build it from the ground up, was to take the vision of the community so that when we get to the point of looking at development partners, we have a plan that's been endorsed by community consultation. And through that and through our partnership, we open all kinds of new opportunities up.
Yeah, and I think we understand that, we like everybody else hope it can be cleaned up tomorrow, but we understand that it's going to take a long process to do it. But at least we're starting it. We're at a stage where at least we're talking about it and we're working on it to fix it. And it may be not our generation, but it'll be next generations that will, someday we'll see this harbor, hopefully as like Stz'uminus and the town of Ladysmith. We want to be back to where it used to be and how we can, it'd be healthy for the communities for long term.
So the major focus it seems like it's a lot of the environmental cleanup in that area of Slack Point where the heavy contamination kind of was, and the ugliness down there. And I know there'd been a charette that was to take place. Maybe just a couple of key points that came out of that charette. What was the overall thought about what could take place down there? What should be the first focus?
Well, to close the loop on the environmental piece too, I think we have to understand that it's like a set of dominoes. There's a series of events that need to take place, and they really are reliant on each step in front of the other. So for example, if we work with the senior levels of government and they say they can give us X amount of dollars to work on Slack Point or in the foreshore areas where there's some contamination, we can work on our development plans on the uplands to help bring the share of our resources to bear. So you'll see pockets develop as the project proceeds. So I think you'll probably see more activity down there through this year into the next year and the year after that. But to imagine that it would all be done in the next 3 or 4 years wouldn't be realistic. But I think that there's a real opportunity to move quickly, and in this kind of, in the bureaucracies of government at all levels and the marketplace in terms of development opportunities, it could be several years, but I don't think it would be 20, 30 years down the road we'd be having this conversation, or I don't think we'd be putting the efforts we are into it now. So I could see some of the pieces, and because the plan isn't finalized, it's hard for us to sit and say, well, we're going to have this here and that there, but some of the elements that were common through the design charrette process were things like a waterfront walkway. That was a very clear preference for people. Some services that would align with a waterfront vision, whether it was somewhere to eat and drink, or it was somewhere to have diving excursions or kayaking lessons, or those kinds of things, cultural centers, historical park area, talking about the mining and forestry history of the area, and going all the way back to the 5,000 years or more of Stz'uminus history, and allowing those anchor pieces to sort of create investment in the pockets in between. And we know that a developer will take on a certain project in a certain area, and that will spur some revenues that will allow us to take care of another piece, and another development partner may come in and do the next piece, and so on. So no unrealistic timelines, but I think that we're aggressively pursuing implementation, and that's the stage we're at now. Now that we've collected the feedback, we've had an amazing design charrette process over the weekend, a couple of weekends ago. Now we take the focus from our leadership teams and our planning teams toward implementation and the economic development piece that supports the whole project. So our intention, and my intention, is to continue to move aggressively on implementation, but we can't really sort of put a fine tip on that until we finish this process.
Yeah, and I think coming out of that charrette, it was really important for Stz'uminus to be engaged in that charrette, and our leadership team was there, and I think what really came out for us in Stz'uminus out of the charrette was the amount of interest and the amount of people that were at this charrette that have a big interest within the area, that coming out of it, everybody has the fear of where is everybody at, where's Stz'uminus at in this, how do they feel about this, how does the town feel about this? But I think coming together in that weekend in that charrette, I think it came out, everybody came out feeling like there's so much progress that was, and that's the way Stz'uminus felt. There's so much progress in there that, we're finally going to move forward on something that we all are on the same page, and we're all thinking about what the right thing is for our communities and what the right thing is for the future of the community here. So I think that's what for us in Stz'uminus, that's what was so important, that charrette kind of let the community of town Ladysmith know on Stz'uminus decide that, you know, we're a partner, we're a team, we're going to make sure this we support this process, and we're going to make it work, because I think they're having the amount of, I can say, I guess, having the amount of power in that room of the people that were there. I think it is so positive, and it's going to make a difference on how we move forward as a relationship with the town of Ladysmith. It's going to build opportunities in future for team, and I think people are seeing that, and that's what's so important.
When you look at that group that was in the charette, it was a pretty powerful group of people. There was a lot of capacity there. I made a joke during the process that I don't think we can afford to hire consultants with that level of capacity in terms of how skilled that they were. And they also represented the most important members of our community in terms of our maritime society, and Stz'uminus leadership and Ladysmith leadership, and community members that have put decades of work into improving our communities and have a real finger on the pulse of the community, and also some realistic ideas about what can be possible in the future. And I think that they've really gotten involved the broader community in the strength of our partnership for various different reasons, from the right thing to do to the most economically feasible thing to do. So there are many reasons that people get invested in this partnership, but whatever those reasons, it's okay. What it is that it allows us to provide progress to all of our people, and the communities of Stz'uminus and Ladysmith coming together has so much power beyond just the leaderships coming together. We're part of a shared community, and if we have a shared vision for the waterfront, we feel that we can show senior levels of government that you have these two communities that are working together on a path of action together. And I think that'll put us in good stead in terms of having other partners at senior levels of government say, listen, we need to look at this fine example of work between Stz'uminus and Ladysmith as an opportunity to show how to do things right. And I think that all the momentum that we have, all the feedback we have from all of the partners and all the potential partners in this is that there's a lot of excitement around it. And I think that that's important as we move forward, to keep that momentum up. And that's how we keep talking about, when are we going to get the next event? When are we going to have the next engagement with the community, so that we can keep up that momentum as we move forward.
And talking about engagement with the community, we did hit the streets in Ladysmith and asked a few people what they had as a vision for that area. And we'll take a listen to some of those concerns, and then we'll come back and talk about that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, vibrant community here in Ladysmith, and I think developing the waterfront can do so much more for increasing tourism, being more of a local draw. We have a lot of young families coming to the community now from Victoria, people priced out of Vancouver, and it'll really make it more attractive for them, more for the children to do, and again, just reinforcing when those tourists come, this is really a special place. It's a place where they're proud of the heritage, but also doing things to continuously improve.
I've always been concerned about the development of the waterfront, and the biggest thing down there was developments a couple of years ago were going to cut off our access to the water. That's the biggest concern of most people here. I honestly don't know enough about what's going on right now to make a perfect comment, but anything that can get things moving down there, I'm with.
For my husband and I, we've talked about that, seeing it as a bigger draw for people, especially tourists, to be able to draw people down to the waterfront. Right now it's not really accessible. Transfer Beach is beautiful, but seeing a bit of commercial development within limits, utilizing, getting more people down to the art gallery and using that area, and down to the marina where the little restaurants and that are, with of course being very conscious of the fact that we need to protect our waterfront areas, but parks and playgrounds and some of the walking trail could be extended there, I think.
I've only been back in this town for a couple of months, so it's hard for me to say what's best, but what I'd love to see is something more touristy, like what they've done with the Coombs area, bringing more tourism into town and making it an awesome place down there for shopping, dining, hanging out, festivals. I would love to see that.
I'd like to see the wrecks removed for sure, and just a general cleanup, make it more user friendly.
So more park trails and stuff?
Well, not even that. I mean, it's nice the way it is because it's rustic and natural, but at least get the garbage out of there.
The things that I did hear from people, and there was not that many that responded that day. It was early in the morning, but we got a couple of good comments. There was the cleanup of the waterfront beyond the industrial pollution that's down there. But you have to address those boats and the garbage that's on the beach, and what's going to be done about that. And that kept coming up in conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think it's really important. I think along with the foreshore cleanup, I think everything else, vessel cleanup or any anything within the harbor, I think we need to work together to clean it up, and that's our goal. I mean, it's not only green space that is important, it's also a clean waterfront. That's where we live, that's where Stz'uminus harvests their food, that's where everybody harvests food and on there. I mean, that's their ocean table. So, we have to do something about it. We have to make sure that, we're protecting the foreshores of contamination, be it vessels or be it other things that can happen within the harbor. So we just got to be more concerned about not only upland but also the foreshore.
And in terms of the derelict vessels, obviously that's another whole story in itself that's gone on for decades, and we've had various successes and challenges with derelict vessels, especially in the 651 water lot, which is where a lot of people envision an expanded marina. It is a crown water lot as well as Slack Point. So those two pieces, the province and the federal government do bear some responsibility. Just last year, the Vicky Lynn 2, which was a big thing for Ladysmith, was removed at a cost of over $1 million, but thankfully not borne by our property taxpayers. And that shows some level of commitment at the federal level to work on it. Now, although it's been slow in terms of legislation around derelict vessels, once that water lot has a license of occupation, it no longer is sort of an unregulated area. So if there were to be a marina operation or some kind of development in there, I'm not as concerned with the derelict vessels because those would be removed as part of that process, but the addressing the opportunity for the liveaboards down there to have somewhere to be. I know that over the last couple of years, as we've had continuing conversations around the issues of derelict vessels, that we've had to sort of serve notice that over time, as these developments take place, the liveaboards down there will have to find somewhere else to be. So we need to be wary of that and be sensitive to that. But I think in terms of the derelict boats, that'll be an issue that sort of is resolved in course as we go through this. And we have had some success in the past. Now we're talking about 7-8 years ago now, removing all of the boats and off the bottom and things like that. And that was addressed as part of our charette as well. The sort of first night was a reality check for people. They showed us LiDAR, boats on the bottom and things like that. So we know what we need to deal with down there, and that would be part of those remediation costs that have been discussed. And then as well as the sort of containment and the control of additional contamination and erosion would be addressed as part of the remediation plan as well. Although it is challenging, I'm not as daunted by it as I would have been 10 years ago, because we have knowledge, we have an understanding, and we have a partnership that brings every resource possible to bear on resolving it. So I think that I can see the opportunity in the uplands. I know the town will be able to generate their share of those costs as long as we can get the federal and provincial governments to the table. I don't think there's any real challenge that's not surmountable in terms of cleaning up the contamination and the derelict vessels.
Is the contamination as bad as people thought it was?
It is bad because it's coal is an organic material. It does other things too in terms of like the harbor flushing, for example. As it erodes into that channel, the depth is taken away and you get other issues that aren't necessarily directly related to contamination, but to the impacts of that sediment on the harbor. And there's different ways to deal with the contamination. So there's a containment, there's capping, there's holding the erosion back versus full removal, which can actually be in some ways sometimes more dangerous, trying to remove these materials than dealing with them in place, if you will. So we still have to figure out what the best combination and the best strategy is for each individual area. The upland contamination wasn't very serious, relatively speaking, so that gives us some opportunity to work on economic development opportunities on the uplands that can help finance some of the costs. And some of the middle range cost estimates were much lower than $30 million and probably more valuable in terms of park space and economic development to both Stz'uminus and Ladysmith. When you talked about the Heritage Park, for example, there's already a great suite of assets down there. They just need to be reclaimed, if you will, taken care of and treated properly. So because we have these sort of pieces in place, I think we're going to be able to, again, bring other partnerships to the table that will allow us to embellish them. And when we did the charette process, everyone had a heritage park with the rail assets and the mining history and all of that, and a Stz'uminus Cultural Center with the history and interpretive displays and things like that. Some of them had them all together, some of them had them spread throughout the development. So it was nice to see the same vision take different forms through the charette. So I think you'll be able to see that realized in terms of the execution. It's just we wouldn't want to presuppose where the best place would be until we get further along in the process. I can see all of that happening down there, though.
All right, we're out of time pretty much here, so I'm just going to give each a chance to have a wrap-up statement on how it's been going so far, quickly summarizing where it's taking or where it's going to go next. So, Chief Elliott.
Sure, I think this has been a very important direction, not only for the Stz'uminus First Nation, but I think the town. Where working together is so important in building relationships and partnerships. That if we don't work together in this day and age, that things just will not move forward. And I think it's really important for us to continue to work together and move forward, because if we do, that it's a benefit to everyone. And having the harbor cleanup and dealing with all the toxins and the things that happen within the harbor and on the land here, we have to continue to sit at the same table. We may disagree with certain things, but at the end of the day, we come together to agree that the best thing is building a future for generations to come, and that's why we're here. And it's not only cleanup; it's also creating opportunities and jobs for the communities, and that's why it's our relationship is important with the town and the people in the town and the people in my community in Stz'uminus. It's important to all of us, because it's going to create those opportunities that will build the future for this area, and that's why we're doing this. It's coming together to make sure that the next generations coming in, that they don't have as much hurdles to come over, or obstacles in their way. We're hoping to break down some of those obstacles, making sure that the next stage is you'll see this area be flourishing with opportunities.
All right. And Mayor Stone, quickly.
To echo Chief Elliott's sentiments, I think that it goes beyond just economic development, environmental remediation. I think the growing together of our communities is really important, culturally and socially. I think that the impacts of developments like this have all kinds of peripheral benefits that I think won't get quite realized until we see it in action. The work that we have together over really decades now is culminating in an opportunity where relationships that go beyond the political leadership can be forged, and economic opportunities and opportunities for jobs and prosperity for everyone in the region will show the best of what working together is all about. And I think that as we work together for the future of our people together, I think that we can shine as an example for communities across Canada in terms of working and walking together. And I just think that it's important that we all stay excited and focused on the end goals, and realize that in any sort of game of life, you'll have challenges through the process, and if you continue to work them with a positive attitude and effort, that you can realize those successes. So it may be next week, or it may be next year, or maybe 5 years from now, but as we continue to work forward together, we can't help but look for good results.
All right, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today on Upfront. We'll be back again in a month, and we'll talk about a shortage of doctors in the Oceanside area. Thanks for watching.